You're watching TSN, the sports network, bringing you the Goodwill Games from St. Petersburg, Russia.
For the Miami Wave, the 1994 NCL season is a simple equation. Win the last 4 races and the conference title is theirs. Miami is led today by the one-man wrecking crew, Brian McDonough. They're seeking an NCL title to call their own. The road to that title begins north of the border. It's War on Wheels next on The Deuce. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Toronto, Ontario, Canada for the NCL race between the Toronto Pride, Forza Milano, and the Miami Wave. I'm Jamie Smith alongside Alexi Graywall. Alexi, Toronto is halfway through their freshman year. Do you think they'll get a passing grade?
They're going to struggle for once. They've been struggling really a lot in the openers. Almost looked hopeless, but this is a big chance for them to regroup. They're on their home course. They're in front of a home crowd. And they've really got to show us today whether they can stack up. They have the stuff to stack it up with them.
And try to get through NCL 101. Milano Forza, they're blocking horns with Amsterdam in the Euro Conference. What are their chances?
Well, they're in a big battle with Amsterdam to, represent the Euro Conference in the world title. I'm sure they want to go. The Euro guys have gotten the world title stuffed down their throats every year so far, so they're going to have to show us here. They have a big opportunity to get points while Amsterdam isn't here. They've got to do it.
And finally, Miami. We've seen them race once all year. In the opening day, they won convincingly. We haven't seen them since. What do you think they're going to be going after today?
Well, they're a good team. They're the favorite. Brian McDonough's here. He's just coming back from broken collarbone. Radisa Kubrick is here, and he's been on really good form. They're really the favorites, and I think you can expect them to take it to the other 2 teams today.
And they're missing their Superman today, Carl Sundquist. We'll see how they do. We talked to them earlier about their chances.
Yeah, anytime you're ahead, that's what you want to be. Better to try and fight those guys off and trying to catch them. They have to beat us, and we have an opportunity. If we just win the rest of our race, that's all we have to do, and we're there.
Joining us in our coverage today of the NCL race here in Toronto is Portland Thunder's Freddie Markham, who's in the pit area for a very special Rider Insight.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm excited to be here, and I'm surrounded by the fans here in Toronto, and I'm trying to bring you the rider's perspective down here, and anything interesting that happens from the pits, I'll pass it along to you guys.
Thanks, Freddie. We'll be back to start it all right here in Toronto on ESPN2.
We're not quite sure what to call it, but everyone seems to have it. The desire to go somewhere, the urge to do something. Bell Mobility salutes the spirit in all of us that makes us want to move. Where you want to go is your business. Letting you go with confidence is ours. Because gravity should be the only thing holding you down. Boldly go with Bell Mobility.
We're underway in Toronto, the National Cycle League on the Deuce, and 3 teams going at it. Alexi Graywall, Jamie Smith in the booth watching what should be a good race as Miami takes off on an early flyer with Brian McDonough. And Alexi Graywall, 3 teams. As we said at the outset, this is going to be a telling tale for Toronto as they will try to get something started. We're in the first lap of the race here in Toronto. Their home race. They wanted to score some points. They wanted to win in the first sprint. We're about 2.5 laps away.
It's really a tight turn. It's going to string things out in the beginning. Looks like Brian McDonough's on the front. And this is a big, important race, especially for Toronto, to salvage some pride. It's also an important race for Miami. They really feel they have a chance at the world title, and they want to show their ability here. They kind of feel like they can win this race by a large margin.
Well, while we have a moment, let's take a look at the 1994 leading scorers, because San Francisco, who's not here today and is not going to be in the world title race, look at the leading scorers so far this year. Thurlow Rogers has scored 244 points. Chris Horner, 228. Down in fourth place, their teammate John Peters, 158. And then the two Irishmen sandwiched in between Declan Lonergan and Alan McCormick, rounding out the top 5. Look at all the points that San Francisco has scored there, and you wonder why they haven't won more races or why they were eliminated from the world title race. And I guess it's just a matter of where those points fall and when. They just weren't able to put them together at the right time.
Well, they had some soft races where they rode against teams that really weren't that strong, where they scored tons of points, and then they rode 2 really tough races against Portland. And though they scored points in those events, Portland outscored them. So San Francisco is a high-scoring team, but when they come up against Portland, they've been beat both times.
Well, here today we have the Toronto Pride, the home team, and you can easily spot them in the yellow, mostly yellow jerseys with a little bit of red trim and white helmets. On the front is the Milan Forza team, or Forza Milano, in the black helmet, but mostly red back. Now, it's a little confusing today because 2 similar colored teams, the Toronto Pride and the Milan Forza, and then Miami is the odd team with the blue sleeves, the red jerseys. You see the yellow helmet of Ziggy Noel De La Cruz. They call him Ziggy for short. And that's Miami, easily the spot in the red, white, and blue jersey. We were talking about Toronto having a hard time early this year. They're an expansion team, and this is only their 3rd race. Alexi, take a look at that graphic and see that they've had some trouble scoring this year.
Yeah, they definitely had trouble scoring. Their total points for the season there, they've had 26 points as a team, and that would leave them 48th as individuals. The 47 individual NCL riders have outscored their entire team, so there's no telling, there's no question that they're in this race, they're in front of their home crowd. They want to salvage some of that. They want to deflate their pride or inflate their ego or something. This week's important for them.
We talked to Arno Turk, their manager and team coach, and asked him what their goals were. He said they just wanted to win a couple of sprints and just see if they can get the hang of this. As we said at the outset, they're in NCL 101, and they are freshmen, and they know it, and so they're working on it. We are a lap and a half away from the first sprint, the first point sprint. Again, the point structure, Alexi, 10 points, 8 points, 6 points, 2 points, 4 points, 2 points, as now it is Rick Froner of the Toronto Pride going up the road. A little bit of a gap over Ziggy De La Cruz from Miami. And we are 1 to go with 1 lap to go. A flyer might be a way to go or shake out some things behind you. Rick Froner with a little bit of a gap, Alexi.
Well, at least it's a good sign. You see Toronto riders trying to put the pressure on, which is something they've been totally unable to do so far this season. So at least in the opening part of the race here, Rick Froner's out there. He's trying to get something shaking. He's trying to get some points early, and this is a good sign. Chris Waskevich from Miami is chasing behind him. The Italians are out of the picture right now.
He's got a gap, and let's see what that tight little turn does to the crew behind them. One rider in no man's land chasing down Rick Froner. The Toronto lineup looks like this: Radek Lukasek, Aaron Bishop, Rick Froner, Chris Fyrick, Dave McIsaac, and Azio Andriola. And they said they wanted to go right after it. And here's Rick Froner setting the pace and making everybody fall in behind. And you can see the Italian rider in the black helmet stalking, coming up behind. That's a long way to go to the finish, though, isn't it?
Well, it's a long way to go to the finish, but the Italian is closing the gap. He's bringing the field up. Looks like Rick Froner starting to fade and die. Waskevich is closed in on him, so it's going to leave the sprint wide open here.
And Rick Froner caught by Wasco. Chris Waskevich from Illinois. And oh, here we are. This is going to be a chess game. I see right there in the middle of the screen is Radis Kubrick as they head out into the turn. Now Miami's all over the front. Miami's got 4 of the top 5 riders. Brian McDonough, the broken collarbone, doesn't seem to be hurting. He's doing a lot of the work. Lloyd Tabing in about 4th place. They're setting up Radisa Kubrick in 3rd place. But watch in 4th place is Toronto Pride rider. It looks like Aaron Bishop, it looks like Dave McIsaac, and it looks like he may win the sprint. Toronto doing it up. They have gone off the front with a little bit of a gap, and Toronto's going to win their first sprint. And they've reached their first goal. How did he do it?
He went faster than everyone else.
I had no idea.
That was awesome. That was something that they came out here to do. That is the first sprint they have won this season. They came off, and he showed a lot of speed in that sprint. He came from 3rd or 4th position, and he passed one of the best sprinters in the league, Radisha Kubrick, on the straightaway. That was an awesome sprint.
He beat 3 Miami riders hands down. They were setting up Radice Kubrick. Miami was with Lloyd Saving and this man, Brian McDonough, and they were shut out. I guess it was, we saw it a couple of weeks ago when we were in London. You don't have to be the first person into the final turn or the second person. He was about 4th or 5th place when he hit that final turn and won the sprint.
Well, he wasn't. Yeah, he was in a good position. The sprint, today's race is into a very stiff headwind on a slight upgrade, so you don't need to be the first person through the final turn in order to have a good chance to win the final sprint. And also, you know, just for them to win a sprint is really impressive. It's going to really inspire the rest of their team. You can see them right now. They have riders represented in the breakaways, and this is just something we haven't seen from them yet this year.
And Bertus Kroon started this breakaway, and one rider from each team. That's in 3rd place. That's Alberghetti from Milano. The score, of course, Toronto now leading at 16-14 to nothing. Milano got shut out altogether, and Toronto finds himself in a position they haven't yet done so yet, in 1st place with a 16-14 lead. The starting roster is taking a look at the Miami team because they have been active so far. Radice Kubrick and Chris Waskevich, Brian McDonough, Lloyd Taving, Bertus Kroon, the Dutchman, and Noel Dela Cruz, Ziggy Dela Cruz, riding for Miami. Milano has brought some big guns. They brought Florenzo Alberghetti, who we saw a moment ago, Dario Saragelli, Massimo Finotto, Massimiliano Peruccio, Vanisana, and Stefano Alocchio. So they've got a very strong team as well.
Stefano Alocchio right now in a 3-man breakaway with Brian McDonough chasing it down. The action is starting hot and early. Italians have decided to put the pressure on. There's one Toronto rider in there, and there are now 2 Miami riders in there, Waskevich and McDonough.
McDonough's the 4th man in line. Bertus Kroon sitting 3rd in line. And number 218 is Ezio Andriola. And there seems to be a gap, and then there seems to not be a gap.
Well, there's a little split in the field early on, and this is going to be the kind of course it's going to be important to stay tight, to stay close, not to let gaps open. It is real windy, especially on the home stretch. There's some crosswind sections, and a race like that, when it's windy, you need to stay in contact. You need to stay close.
There's a good shot of the gap between Bertus Kroon, Stefano Alocchio. That 4-man group. There's 4 of the top 5 places if you're not in that group, or maybe in the second group. Second group is only fighting for 2 points, so the race is up the road, all the big points. A lot of pressure on that one Toronto rider and that one Italian rider. Miami has a little bit of advantage with 2.
If you notice there, the Toronto rider is not pulling. He's forcing the Miami riders. He's forcing the Italian riders to work. The Italian rider right now is taking a pull on the front. For him, this is a total mistake. He's in this group. He's not the best sprinter out of those 3, and he's not well represented. He shouldn't ride unless he has another Italian with him in the break. So for the Italian riders and for the Toronto rider, it's the smart thing for them to do is just sit on that break, not pull, save it for the sprints, and hope they get some other riders up there. Otherwise, the Miami riders with 2 out of the 4 are going to score the majority of the points out of this group, and they'll be able to easy lead just by virtue of having the fact that they have numbers in this breakaway. 1
to go for the sprint. You hear the horn in the background. You saw a little activity up the road behind them, and one rider has broken free for 2 points, perhaps trying to bridge up to the breakaway that you see on your screen now. So there's 4. One rider's chasing, and you can see him coming into the picture. And this will give us a better idea of how far behind he is. Let's see how this breakaway sets up for the sprint, though. It's an Italian rider bridging. He's only got a little bit of a gap over the 4 more chasers from the field.
Yeah, he does have a little gap to close here. One interesting thing to note, of these 4 riders in the breakaway, we have, goodness gracious. Yeah, we have Bertus Kroon is in there. We also have Brian McDonough. That's the point I wanted to make. Brian McDonough is coming back off a broken collarbone. This is his first race back. I talked with him on the plane yesterday. We happened to be on the same plane, and he was kind of upset, kind of bummed about his collarbone. It hadn't even started to knit yet. So for him to be out front here in position for the final sprint is pretty impressive.
I'm going to ask you about that after the sprint, about the collarbone. If you've ever broken one, you've broken bones before. I just want to ask you a little bit about the recovery process. He flicks his elbow. He doesn't want to pull all the way into the wind. Now that they make that turn into the wind, he doesn't want to be on the front, and this is where it's going to slow down. This is where they're going to get caught from behind, as they just did by the big Italian, who is now sitting in 5th position there. So he's now in contention for the win. A good, strong sprinter. Where's the field? The field has let those 5 riders go. The 5 places are up the road, and they've, for all intents and purposes, given up. And this is only the second sprint. 2 Italians, 2 Miami riders. One rider out, odd man out, is in 2nd place there in the Toronto Pride jersey. sitting on Bertus Kroon's wheel.
Here comes Brian McDonough.
Well, you can just see it's got to hurt that shoulder to get out of the saddle. This is the sprint up the finishing stretch. He may hold on for the win, but look at the, yes, he will. And Toronto takes second. So Toronto did well out of 5 places.
They did take second. They got second place points in that sprint. But it's not going to be enough to keep them in good points with 2 Italians, 2 Miami riders in the front. It's going to just not be enough.
And we'll be back to check the score here in Toronto after 2 sprints right after this.
Our game is Canada's game. More light, more drama, more real TV. Canada's game is the CFL live on TSN. Double shot weekend is coming your way. Friday, the Vegas Posse take on the Argos. Saturday, the Western Rough Riders take on the Gold Miners. Real TV, TSN.
Welcome back to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. The NCL on ESPN2. The score after 2 sprints, Miami now leads at 28-24-8. Toronto's still doing well. And now we'll go back down into the pit to our roving reporter, Freddie Markham. What's going on, Freddie?
Thank you, Jamie. Well, I'm really impressed with the speed these guys are carrying down the main straightaway here. They're probably hitting, you know, up over 30 miles an hour, and they're doing this into a stiff headwind. So they're doing a great job, and back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Freddie Markham. We'll get more insight from the course as the race goes by. And look at what happens to Radek Lukasek. The Toronto rider just got just biffed it into the corner.
He just miscalculated that turn, and that took him out of contention for the first 2 places in this sprint. And that might cost him the race.
That really hurt. 10 points just went up the road. 18 points just went up the road in the shape of Stefano Alocchio and Brian McDonough, as Radek Lukasek just sort of bought it into the bales. Maybe carried too much speed through that corner, do you think?
It looked like he took a little too much of an outside line. Hopefully we get a replay on it, but he missed the turn for sure. Had to almost get off the bike.
Meanwhile, up the road goes Stefano Alocchio in the black helmet. See in the background is the Toronto rider, Radek Lukasek, trying to make up for that. Brian McDonough sits in the catbird seat. He is just waiting to make the jump. And actually now he's just sort of pedaled past Stefano Alocchio.
It looks like he wants to keep the gap on the 2 riders behind him, and so he has an easier sprint. I think he thinks he can take Stefano Alocchio pretty easily for the top points here as they go into the final turn here before the sprint.
I meant to ask you about how the recovery from that collarbone is going to affect the way he rides. Now let's just see the way he affects his sprint. Stefano Alocchio makes a jump up the left side of the road. Brian takes a look over, and this is a 2-up drag sprint. Look at Stefano Alocchio getting a lot of energy out of that bike, or a lot of distance on Brian McDonough, and 10 points right there for Italy. Oh my God, he did it quick. Brian, is that a problem with the shoulder or what?
Well, I don't know if it's a problem with the shoulder. You didn't see Brian get up out of the saddle and really make a hard move. It looked like he kind of was resigned to second place. Maybe he's saving it.
Now let's take a look at what you wanted to see before. This is Radek Lukasek coming into that turn, that sharp turn.
Well, he dives into it real hard, and when he hits the paint stripe, he slides, and then he has to straighten out, and then he ends up basically having to skid and misses the turn. But I think it's when he hit the paint stripe, he slid his wheel, and then instead of continuing on a smooth arc, he had to kind of straighten up, and then he blew his turn in. You can see him right there just struggling to get out of the turn in one piece.
Our score now after 3 sprints, Miami leads it and extending their lead, 44-28-18. Toronto still in the hunt. And as we said at the outset, Miami is only racing in their second race, second weekend of the season. And they haven't raced since early April in Miami. So they're finding a little bit of trouble, as you said, getting their team together. That would be a good idea for him to stop and wait. He's not seeming to want to do that. Bertus Kroon is waving for some reason, waving at that, trying to get his attention, saying, wait up, wait for me, I can help.
Yeah, nothing ever used to piss me off more than that. Have a teammate out in front of me, have, you know, another 10 miles to the next sprint or whatever, and the teammate out in front of you won't look back, won't slow down. You hang behind him for 10 seconds behind him for 5 miles, where if the guy would just give you a break, slow down for, you know, in this situation, Brian McDonough slowed down for a few minutes.
Yeah, it would only
if he slowed down for 400 meters, Bertus Kroon would catch him and they could work together. It would just make it so much easier.
Alexi, if we ever go riding together, I promise to wait for you.
Okay.
All right.
Otherwise, I'll turn into one-man wrecking crew.
On my little head.
Right.
2 riders away. They've received the bell for 1 to go. Brian McDonough is the rider on the front with the white helmet. The black helmet is Stefano Allocchio, the Italian Milano Forza team. They're taking a look back, and now Brian McDonough seems to, he's looked over his shoulder and seen Bertus Kroon. Let's see if he slows down. They've got a half of a lap to go to the sprint. I think now he has noticed how close Bertus Kroon is behind.
Well, I think he noticed before. I just think he has not decided to slow down. Well, we'll see. You know, at this point, if he pulls between here and the sprint, then he obviously doesn't care if he catches or not. But it's important in the team race for the team riders to look, to know where all the other riders are on their team, if possible. I always thought it was important to look behind you as much as it was to look in front.
Okay, now there he goes. He just sat up and he's not coming around. So yeah, apparently, yeah, he just
good.
Stefano Allocchio, as you said, just flicked his elbow, and Brian McDonough says, "No, I'm not ready to come around." No. All right, this is a sprint lap too. You wouldn't know that by how fast they're going. Stefano, he's really trying to shake his elbow, trying to send a message. Come on, Brian, you can pull around any time now. But Brian's waiting for this man.
And that's actually Chris Waskevich, so we got to kind of change of position there. But as they come into the sprint, let's see, this is an important sprint.
Brian McDonough sitting in a good position, but Stefano Allocchio is going to have to lead from the front this time. He goes early, almost right out of the turn. That's a big headwind. Brian McDonough has him marked. Still a long way to go. Brian is the rider on the left who has gone around and will stay around for 10 points for Miami. He did it right that time. They will take first and third that we can see. That's 16 points for Miami. A great sprint by Brian. We'll be back to check the score and more in the NCL here on ESPN2 right after this.
We're not quite sure what to call it, but everyone seems to have it. The desire to go somewhere, the urge to do something. Bell Mobility salutes the spirit in all of us that makes us want to move. Where you want to go is your business. Letting you go with confidence is ours. Because gravity should be the only thing holding you down. Boldly go with Bell Mobility.
Welcome back to the Deuce in the National Cycle League. 1 lap to go in the first half here in Toronto. That's these 3 riders, Brian McDonough, Chris Waskevich, and Stefano Allocchio. I'm Jamie Smith along with Alexi Graywall. Alexi, they have attacked and Wasco has dropped Stefano Allocchio. They're trying to shake and bake him, aren't they?
Well, they're trading attacks. It's 2 of them, 1 of him. They're trading attacks back and forth, and at this point, Chris Waskevich has opened a little bit of gap, but Stefano Allocchio has not given up. It looks like he's making a move to try to drive it back together right there. See, he's kind of frustrated having Brian McDonough just sitting on his wheel, but he's trying to drive it back together. But whether or not he can get anything better than 3rd place in this sprint, we'll have to see.
Our score after 4
Certainly
sprints.
It'd be hard.
Miami leads at 60 to 32 to 28. 60 for Miami, Toronto with 32, Milano with 28. So Milan needs some points here. 3rd place might be the best they can get as this man is off the front. That's Chris Waskevich. And the guy doing all the work behind him is in the black helmet. That's Stefano Allocchio. And he's got to be thinking he's just going to... He's going to be stuck with...
He's not thinking right now. He's suffering. he's thinking...
Stuck with 3rd place.
My coach is up there, and he's on the straightaway, and he's going to be pissed off when I get 3rd place in this sprint.
There's a guy who's going to win this sprint for 10 points from Miami. That's Chris Waskevich. He's about to lap the field as we go into halftime. He will fall just short of that, but they have done it. Miami has done it well for 1st place for 10 points. Right behind him, let's see, Brian McDonough did do it for 18 points for Miami to end out the first half. We'll be back to check highlights and replays, and we'll talk to Freddie, show you the score. We'll be back on the Deuce. Welcome back to the Deuce in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and the Scarborough Civic Center. I'm Jamie Smith with Alexi Graywall. We're at halftime with a score of Miami 80, Milan 38, Toronto 32. Our leading scorers at the half. Brian McDonough of Miami, of course, on that tear in the first half with 38 points. Stefano Alocchio with 30. Chris Waskevich with 22. Highlights from the first half include the highlight of the season for Toronto with the sprint, the first sprint of the game.
The first sprint of the game, and it's Ezio Arola in the front taking this sprint from the two riders behind him, and this is like almost amazing. He came from 4th place. You can see him drive into the line. We couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. Look at that effort he made. It was awesome.
And 10 points there with a little bit of a gap lead over Miami. We have now Freddie Markham. He's down in the pits talking to the manager of the Toronto Pride, Arno Turk.
Thank you, Jamie. Arno, your team just scored 32 points. That's more points this half than your team has scored the whole rest of the year. How do you account for that? A change of strategy or what?
Absolutely. We realized after the first 2 races that we were just riding too passively, sort of waiting like a regular criterium as if we're going to, save it all up for the end. And with this kind of race, you got to be going all the time, right from the gun. And we also decided that not only just going with the attacks, but we wanted to be initiating the attacks this year. You're not going to get anywhere if you're just sort of chasing everybody else. We wanted to start dictating our race here.
Jamie, Alexei, you got a team that's learning with every race, and you can't do much better than that. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Freddie. Alexei, they had some highlights, but then they had some lowlights, as we'll take a look at that crash by Radek Lukasek.
Radek Lukasek dives into the turn here. Watch his front wheel very carefully as he hits that paint line right there. You see it slide a little bit, and once he got on the brakes, after that, and once you get on the brakes in the middle of a turn, you go straight. You ended up going straight right into the hay bale, get stuck in the turn. It was a freshman error, and he made it.
And that took them almost right out of the picture in the first half. We'll be back for the second half here in Toronto after this, right here on the Deuce. Don't go away.
We're not quite sure what to call it, but everyone seems to have it. The desire to go somewhere, the urge to do something. Bell Mobility salutes the spirit in all of us that makes us want to move. Where you want to go is your business. Letting you go with confidence is ours. Because gravity should be the only thing holding you down. Boldly go with Bell Mobility.
Welcome back to Toronto, Ontario, Canada for the second half of the National Cycle League. I'm Jamie Smith. Alexei Graywall is here too. And we have Fast Freddie Markham, who is down in the pits with more for us. Freddie?
Well, Miami really doesn't have to do much more than they've already done to win this thing. They're putting guys off the front. McDonough and Waskevich were scoring big-time points in the first half, and if they can get guys away like that in the second half, I think they've really got it. Toronto, they started the first half really aggressive, and they kind of faded a little bit, but they're looking pretty good. If they can get guys in and off the front in the second half, I think they can overtake second place here. They ought to be able to beat Italy because Italy was looking just a little weak. Italy got lucky, put one guy up there in the main break in the first half, and that's where the majority of their points came. I just don't see a whole lot of depth there. So, I think if Toronto plays their cards right, they ought to be able to maybe get second out of this thing. I think it's a long shot for them to overtake Miami, but, who knows? It's a long race. In the second half, there's a lot of points up for grabs.
With the lap to the sprint, with 6 riders away like this, with so many people represented, it wouldn't surprise me at all if we see the whole field together going into this final sprint, because with 6 riders in the front, no one is really usually motivated to pull and ride because of the different, there's just no advantage. So right now we should probably see the field regroup. We see Stefano Alocchio again making the pace on the front. He's shown us pretty consistently throughout the day that he hasn't really been thinking. He's covered real closely by Toronto riders with the Miami riders in close contact.
That's Dave McIsaac in the lead now, right there in the Toronto jersey, number 215. The number shows up on his frame, on his helmet. He's right there in the front marking, watching everybody. And Alocchio jumps again. He did not take a look back to see if he had any teammates on his wheel. This is a sprint lap, and now he thinks he's going to win this sprint by himself. He is stringing it out. His teammate is in about 4th position back. That is the Toronto rider in 3rd. It is our second. Bertus Kroon, I believe, is the rider in the Miami jersey. They get into that headwind, and it just sort of regroups. They look around to see if anybody's going to attack. But Alocchio is doing a lot of work, but I don't think he's consulting his teammates.
No,
he's really consulting them.
He's riding like a wild cannon right now. Going into the first sprint. He should really wait, get his teammates together with him, and then make a move together. See right there, and it's all together coming to this sprint. It's going to be a hot one. This is going to be probably one of the fastest ones of the day, and we're really going to see who's got the speed because the whole group's coming together in the final turn.
Lloyd Tabing is the one leading it through that final turn. Radisa Kubrick in second place. It is a big, tall Italian, Dario Saragelli in third place. Let's see how he can do. But Toronto's coming up on the far left side. That is Ezio Andriola, and he is going to take it all the way to the line. Toronto winning the first sprint again and doing well behind to take third and fifth place. But Toronto, what a coup for them. Big points that time for Ezio Andriola. And Radek Lukasek, great sprint for Toronto.
Great sprint for Toronto. I think they should keep old Ezio up there in the front more often. They should kind of design their tactic to make sure he can get up there for the sprints because he's had no problems handling those guys. And if you can handle Brian McDonough, if you can handle those guys like that with that much ease, you might as well stay up there and stay in position so you can win more of those sprints.
That's Wasco going off the front a little bit. We'll be back to check the score and more here in Toronto on the NCL on ESPN2. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Summertime fun, need refreshment. Yeah! Summertime fun, need refreshment.
Introducing new frozen concentrated iced tea from McCain. Refreshing, thirst-quenching beverage made with the essence of unique tea blends. McCain iced tea. Caffeine-free, no powdery taste. Just a clean, fresh-tasting flavor of McCain iced tea. Caffeine-free, no powdery taste. McCain, great-tasting refreshment down to a T.
Welcome back to Toronto. 6 sprints down the score after 6. Miami leads at 82, but big points in that last sprint for Toronto. They got 20 of them, 52 for them. Milano with 40. Let's take another look at this sprint. This got him 20 points.
And they're all over the road. You see Ezio Areola right in the front. Look at him, his head down. He's driving. He's thinking, I'm going to win another sprint. Only the second sprint win for Toronto this year. And look at the other Toronto jerseys. They're also in third and fourth to the line. It was an awesome move. Awesome sprint. Look at the front view.
Yeah.
All the Toronto riders in the front driving. This is a sight that they'll love to see this replay. This is great. Look at Ezio. Oh, he crosses the line, throws his bike a little bit. Wow, that was great.
All right, and now they are 1 lap to go for a sprint. You heard the horn in the background signifying 1 lap to go. Let's see if they can do it again. That is Massimo Finotto, who was making a jump at the black helmet for the Forza Milano. Chris Waskevich, Wasco on the front.
And this
Froner in about third place.
Another great sprint. A lot of speed in that group right there.
All
McDonough, Waskevich.
McDonough leads it out now. He wants to be the one driving it. Let's see. They've done it before, but they've done it twice so far. And Toronto has spoiled them in the first sprint and the 6th sprint. Brian McDonough is the rider on the front, the white helmet of the Miami Wave. Right behind him is an Italian. I believe that's Massimo Finotto. Brian McDonough still leading it around. Toronto sort of shut out in the top 3 or 4 places. Radis Kubrick right there throws a shoulder to hold his position. Brian McDonough taking a look back, wants to see where everybody is. He wants to see more blue and pink jerseys up there. And now Bertus Kroon has come up from about 5th place. He's going to lead them into the final turn. They've got the top 3 places stacked up, but that hasn't meant squat in this sprint. It is going to mean something, though, because he has carried that momentum. Bertus Kroon is going to carry it all the way to the line. Toronto's going to try to muster 2nd place. Bertus Kroon, if he can hold on, is going to take 10 points. And he will. And Miami's going to rack up some more. In about 1, 3, and 5. Toronto in 2nd and 4th. A great sprint for Toronto again. Italy shut out, and Miami scored big points.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. Toronto has scored more points in this race with more guys. They've done a fantastic job. I mean, literally, they're on track to perhaps win the race. That was a great sprint on their part.
They've got to get rid of Miami first. Miami scored big points that time. They scored, let's see, in first 10 points, 6. They scored 18 points in that sprint. And now still find themselves out the front. Toronto, though, they're all, remember in Tulsa, well, you weren't in Tulsa. In Tulsa, they were nowhere. In fact, they got dropped. By the end of the first half, they had no riders left in the race. So this is stark contrast.
Fantastic. And the same thing in Boston. In Boston, they were riding around in the infield.
Oh, that's right. They watched
halfway through the event, watching the rest of the riders ride. They were so discouraged. They just were totally shut down there. In this race, they've done quite a good job.
But as Wasco takes off, it was Arno Turk who said it was so hot in Tulsa and muggy in Tulsa and hot and muggy in Boston. Here it's cool and dry. unfortunately, you can't take the home weather with you.
Yeah, you see Rick Froner, who just chased down Waskevich. Rick Froner in the hot weather could barely get out of his own way. And now he's at the front working, doing a great job keeping his team in the race. He's definitely improved. They've improved 100%. They're giving Miami a run for their money. Miami really isn't showing the kind of form that they'll need in order to take the world title. They should, a team like Portland be stacking up a lot more points. Miami hasn't really shown the kind of strength that we expected from them.
Without making excuses for him, Brian McDonough is riding hurt with a broken collarbone that's failed to heal, and Carl Sundquist is not here. Our score after 7, take a look. Miami 106, Toronto 64, and Milano with 40. And this is far from over. That double point sprint is suddenly looming larger and larger. Ziggy Dela Cruz has taken off the front. And
He's
a little bit of
cruising.
gap and being chased by one of his riders. And Miami is really...
Right there. They had all 5 riders of theirs were in the first 5 positions, and they really controlled the front. You can see them sitting up there in the back. The other riders from Italy, at times, are totally out of position. You see a hand-sling there to try to get the Toronto riders back up into this move. So they're attempting to get up there. Rick Froner again.
But Ziggy and Brian McDonough are right there, are riding away, and they put on that gap. They put on a big hurt on this field in a short amount of time. They didn't use hand slings. They just used the left leg and the right leg
They used
repeatedly.
the left leg and the right leg, and they had the first 5 positions really in command, and now it's up to Rick Froner to try to come across this gap. Should he do it, it's an impressive chase, but once again, Miami has controlled the front. They've controlled the amount of numbers in the breakaway, and this is the whole race.
But look,
here.
Rick Froner has now made the bridge. That hand sling really works, doesn't it? It really takes a lot of uses a lot of energy that the rider doesn't.
Well, the hand sling gets you up to speed without having to use any energy, so then you can continue a pursuit. Hand slings are important, and they used that one very, very well. If they didn't use that hand string, I don't think that Rick Froner would have been able to come across that gap, but it just gave him just enough initiative in his legs, just enough punch so that his legs gave out probably just when he got there. You can see right now he's having to let the other rider go. He's having to let...
Yeah, Ziggy Dela Cruz has now gone up, and Brian McDonough is left to babysit Rick Froner. Rick Froner may have spent too much energy or is now just trying to recover. You may see him attack to get up to Ziggy up the road here momentarily. Spent a lot of energy to get to that breakaway. As they receive the horn for 1 to go, this will be sprint number 8. And 10 points would really look good in Rick Froner's pocket, but it's this man, Ziggy Dela Cruz from Miami, who's riding away and being allowed to let go by Brian McDonough. Brian McDonough wants him to go farther up the road.
This is going to be a personal coup for Ziggy Dela Cruz. He's an older rider, a lot of experience, but he's looking at winning a sprint in the NCL, and this is just probably going to make his day. This is going to be exciting for him. Look at him look back. He's thinking, I might be able to do this. Whoa, look at that way he took that turn. Whoa, pretty quick.
He knows many ways through a turn. Ziggy Dela Cruz will take a look at the hand sling right in the middle portion of the screen.
Right there, you can see that hand reaching back, grabs it. Rick Froner takes a big sling. And you can look at that gap behind there. The gap's like almost 6 or 7 seconds, and it gives him just enough acceleration to get up to speed to start his pursuit. You see him cutting back across, trying to get set up for the turn.
And he bridged in about a half a lap.
It was a pretty awesome bridge, and that hand sling was really the initiative that made it possible.
Meanwhile, up the road, Ziggy Dela Cruz on the Miami Wave. He's got a gap now over the 2 chasers, Brian McDonough and Rick Froner.
Yeah, he's got a real good gap. He's headed for 10 points, and this is going to be awesome for him. It's going to actually put Miami out ahead and may make them uncatchable.
Well, we still have double points in lap 10, but this is going to extend that lead with 10 points here. Brian McDonough is not necessarily concerned with setting up for 8 points because right behind him they have another rider who's bridging up. So Miami has 3 of the top 4 places, no matter how you look at it. And Ziggy, with 1 turn to finish, is going to be on the home stretch with 10 points, 200 meters away. The sun comes out. The sun is shining on Ziggy now. And he will take 10 points right there. Cha-ching.
He's really driving it to the line, too. He's riding a really good pace.
He may just try to stay away. He's got 2 sprints to do. That could mean another 10, another 20. So that could be 40 points. Let's see if he can do it. Ziggy Dela Cruz behind him is a sprinter. Rick Froner is going to take 8 points for Toronto, and a good sprint for him to outgun 2 Miami riders. Brian McDonough takes that chance to go up the road, maybe to ride up there with Ziggy.
Yeah, it looks like Brian McDonough didn't go that hard in that sprint. Eased off, let Rick Froner take it, and then counterattack. Now it looks like he's getting together with his other team. It looks like Chris Waskevich, and they're all going to, 3 of the Miami riders going to join together and just try to roll away in this breakaway and take most of the points.
And we'll see if they can do it after this. Put it in neutral. We're taking a break on ESPN2.
We're not quite sure what to call it, but everyone seems to have it. The desire to go somewhere, the urge to do something. Bell Mobility salutes the spirit in all of us that makes us want to move. Where you want to go is your business. Letting you go with confidence is ours. Because gravity should be the only thing holding you down. Boldly go with Bell Mobility.
Welcome back to Toronto. If you've been looking for Dario Saragelli, here he is, and he had a mechanical through a chain. He is now out of the race. The race is still going strong with a couple laps of sprints to go. The score 128 to 72 to 40. A great showing by Toronto. They're going to fall short, but still a double point sprint still to come. But here's your lead group. 3 riders from Miami: Brian McDonough, Chris Waskevich, Ziggy De La Cruz, and the rider, the odd man out, is Rick Froner, Spidey, they call him, the Toronto Pride.
Yeah, and what we've seen in this group is Waskevich and McDonough doing all the work, driving the speed, driving the pace the whole time. Rick Froner sitting on in good position, just trying to get to the sprint. Hopefully being able to take away some of the top, getting the top 2 or 3. Ziggy De La Cruz has just been hanging on at the back there. He's like the man in reserve for Miami, waiting for the sprint himself. And it's been all Miami right now.
And see what they just did. This is a sprint lap. Brian McDonough gave a little burst of speed to get out of that corner. Now they're going to keep Rick Froner back there. And up the road goes 10 points. Ziggy De La Cruz to 8 points. If they can just stay away, they take a look back. Rick Froner's just got to try to beat Chris Waskevich, and he's getting left behind. It's going to be a 1-2-3 finish for Miami if Rick Froner can't catch. Let's take a look. The yellow helmet, Ziggy's going to take another one. Miami takes 1, 2, 3. Rick Froner gets shut out. He gets 4 points for all that work.
But 4 points is better than they did before. But right now, basically, you're just seeing Miami just totally control the front. Rick Froner just in there. He's just basically along for the ride. Ziggy has done a great job, and this is Miami is showing their strength.
Take another look at that sprint, and you'll see total domination. Ziggy in the yellow helmet. Not bad for 40 years old.
No, he simply takes it to the line, clean and clear. McDonough and Waskevich don't look like they even have to really drive on it too hard. They're so far out in front. I think that Rick Froner, he's a little bit resigned now.
Let's take a look. Let's take a listen. Let's go down to the pit area for some more insight from Fast Freddie Markham. Freddie?
Thanks, Jamie. Well, Rick Froner's got his hands full, you know, and there's not much else he can really do but hang tight. And he's going to get worked over, and I'm sure Alexei knows how this works. You know, you've got 3 teammates working against you. What can you do? The only thing he can really hope for is to not get dropped, stay with that group, and to score as many points as he possibly can.
Well, they far exceeded. Thanks, Freddie. They far exceeded, Alexei, their goals coming into the race. They weren't trying out necessarily to win today's race. They knew Miami was such a tough team. They just wanted to reach these small goals of winning a sprint here and there, scoring more points than before. They've got to be happy, right?
Well, they've got to be happy. Every other outing, they've just got thoroughly buried. But at this point, they've scored a lot of points. They're definitely lined up. It looks like they'll finish second. Boston obviously is going to win the race. I think there's nothing that can take that away from them. But Toronto has done a great job. They've shown that they can ride in the NCL.
Look at our score. Miami now 158, Toronto 78. That's triple what they had coming in. Milano 40. Now, Milano's been shut out the last 3 sprints. I'm going to guess that Damiano Capadavento, who's the coach screaming on the sidelines, is going to eat in a different restaurant tonight.
He probably will eat in a different restaurant. He'll eat in an expensive Italian restaurant, and they'll eat at McDonald's. I'm sure that the Italian coach is rather upset. I don't know. It seemed like they had a lot of strength. It seemed like Stefano Alocchio could have done a lot more than he did. I think he spent himself early, and he just, towards the middle of the race, he was gone. And right now, the Italians are out of the picture entirely. I mean, they have basically been whitewashed. second part of the second half.
Now the question will be, does Miami, you alluded to it earlier, does Miami have the huevos to go to title race number 6? I remind you that they're riding hurt and they're riding short. They don't have Carl Sundquist. Can they challenge Pittsburgh? Can they challenge the
Well,
Atlantic
I think
Conference?
they're certainly, they're definitely contenders for the Atlantic Conference. I don't think there's any question about that. Whether they'll win or not, we'll have to let the races see, but I think they are contenders. Whether they can win Portland, beat Portland, or whether they can win the world title is a whole other story. But they've showed today that they can dominate a race, and they've done it without Carl Sundquist, who is perhaps their best rider. So they're definitely an impressive squad.
This will be double points. This will be the final sprint coming up momentarily. Double points, of course, if we award 10 points for first, now we're going to double it to 20, 16, 12, 8, 4. So Miami is in good position to just rack up huge numbers on this final sprint, as they have 3 in the top 4 riders. And there goes Brian McDonough off in search. He jumps up the other side of the road, leaving Rick Froner to do the rest of the work. And Rick Froner's not going to get any help from Miami behind him, is he? Brian McDonough up the road, a huge gap, and receiving the horn. He's got 20 points on his mind. Rick Froner is left to tend with these two, Chris Waskevich and Ziggy Dela Cruz. With 1 to go in the race, Miami did what they have to do mathematically if they want to have a chance, as we said at the outset. If they want to have a chance, the equation is simple. They need to win all of their races. Well, here's one that they will put in the books. Brian McDonough is off the front. Huge. Rick Froner's the only one interested in catching him.
Yeah, and you can see behind Brian McDonough, Waskevich is counterattacking now. They're trying to split up. They're trying to both get away from Rick Froner. And this is a great move. This is a great race for Brian McDonough. You got to see that he's coming back from 4 weeks of not racing. He's coming back from a broken collarbone. When I spoke with him in the airport, like I said before, he said that his collarbone hadn't really fully knit together yet. He's come back. He's on his way perhaps to being the top scorer for the day. Certainly an impressive showing, and certainly he can look forward to even better and better form in the coming races. And should he be in the world title race, he will be a big player.
Now, does it matter that he didn't have to do a lot of sprinting, a lot of oh, look at it. No, he's getting signals from his signals from his teammates. What was that all about?
I think what they'll do here, my guess is Chris Waskevich will come up to him and they'll cross the line together. So this will be the theatrical, hey, we stomped on you, so they're going to celebrate.
Oh, yeah, big smiles.
That's what I have done with my brother a few times. I had to wait for him.
I'll remind him. Okay, I'll tell him that. Well, let's see.
He reminded me when I didn't wait for him, but I think they're going to ride to the line together and go across with their arms raised.
Toronto, a town of theaters with Phantom of the Opera, and you name the theaters, they're all around. They're going to get a little theatrical here. All smiles. Chris Waskevich, and Brian, the one-man wrecking crew. Big smiles for Miami today as they're scoring big. And this is a double touchdown. 38 points alone on this sprint. 20 for first, 18 or 16 for second. My math is all screwed up, but there it is. Miami all by itself. And behind, Ziggy Dela Cruz is going to give way to Rick Froner. Rick Froner is going to salvage something for the Toronto Pride.
Wow.
Good sprint. All right. Who says 8 points isn't worth sprinting for? You bet. Rick Froner does it well. Oh, great race for Miami. They did what they have to do. Toronto, great race for them. Over 80 points. And we'll be back to check the highlights and the score here in Toronto when the NCL returns on ESPN2.
The Crown Royal.
Welcome back to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where the final score today was Miami, the big 200. Toronto, big time, 90. Milano shut out almost in the second half. They have 40. Leading scorers, Brian McDonough with 70. Chris Waskevich with 60. Stefano Alocchio with 30. Today's leading scorer is standing by with the all-time leading scorer, Fast Freddie Markham. Freddie?
Thank you, Jamie. Well, I'm standing here with Brian McDonough. He was the leading scorer of the race today. Scored 70 points, won that all-important 20-pointer at the end, and Miami really took it to him today. How'd you do it, Brian?
Teamwork. That's the key here, and we had the numbers all day, and kind of were able to dictate the race to the other teams.
It was a great race. Jamie and Alexi, it was good to see Toronto have a good race, and I've had fun working with you guys. We'll see you next week in Portland.
Thanks, Freddie. That's going to do it for us here in Toronto. Our final score, once again, Miami 200, Toronto 90, Milano 40. For Alexi Graywall and Fast Freddie Markham, this is Jamie Smith saying so long.
From Big Sur that are welcome anywhere. Choose the Shaker Group with waterbed and wardrobe, or the Oak Group with waterbed and high chest for about $24 a month. This Canopy waterbed with mirrored ceiling is about $39 a month. So, you can have one of our groups, or...
Hi, thank you.
Big Sur waterbeds.
Take the family to the Erie County Fair for only $9.95 admission with the Family Weekday Fun Pass. Advance sales only at participating Tops Friendly Markets now through August 11th from Tops and News Channel 7.
News Channel 7, Buffalo, your hometown team.
News Channel 7, Buffalo, your hometown team.